Welcome to Codex, History of Video Games. My name's Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week we're starting our new book. We're going through the book called Console Wars by Blake J. Harris. You should buy this book and read along with us because we're not going to read it to you, but it's really good. This book kind of focuses on the late 80s, early 90s era of video games where the console wars between Sega and Nintendo were really heating up. And it follows kind of one central character through the whole thing, which is Tom Kalinske, the person who would become CEO of Sega during that time, Sega of America, and would really put the Genesis on the map. And I'm just loving this book so far.
Me too. I've been excited to read this one for a while, so I am into it. But yeah, we're kind of doing personally, we're doing a little different formatting for how we're talking about this book versus our books in the past. And yeah, we're not going to read it to you because then it'll be an audiobook. We can't do that. Legally, that's a problem.
Legally, we cannot read this book to you. However, we can talk about the contents within and our thoughts on them, especially. I actually really love, like on a meta level, I love how this book is written because it's written almost like a fictional story, but it's not a fictional story. And there's like a sort of a disclaimer at the beginning of the book that's like, hey, some of this stuff like is multiple conversations pasted together to feel like one conversation. Like the overall story shouldn't be inaccurate, but the author did take some liberties with like the exact words that were probably said in the room, especially because it's mostly based on interviews from people about things that happened 30 years ago. So, you know, they're not getting the words all right either.
Yeah, I loved it. I also think that for me, I like this style more than textbooky style, like the last ones.
Me too.
Which is fine. I mean, don't get me wrong, the textbook was good because we got so much information thrown at us so quickly, but this is really doing it for me right now. I'm a big fan of this book. Big fan.
The Ultimate History of Video Game style, like the textbook style, like you're talking about, is nice too for like referencing things. Like if you want to just go to a particular period and like read about that, you can do that. Whereas if you do that in this book, you're kind of jumping in the middle of a story. And so like you're going to be missing some things if you just jump right in. So you kind of have to read it front to back rather than jumping around like you could do with the other one.
Yeah, we can't jump around.
Pros and cons.
All right. Well, do you want to talk about the intro, the foreword by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg? Because you have a hot take, and I love it.
There's a foreword here written by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, and this is the writing team that brought us things like Superbad and Pineapple Express and The Interview, and you know they were kids during this time, or like you know teenagers during the late '80s, early '90s when this whole console war stuff was really heating up. And so they have that perspective on it. I think they also maybe financed a lot of this book. I can't remember exactly what it is. They have some sort of connection to this book beyond just like, oh, we asked them to say a few things, because neither of these guys are particular experts on video games. They're just funny people who have written some funny movies. But there's a foreword in it that's like advertised on the front cover. That's like, oh, foreword by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. And my hot take is they really phoned this foreword in. It adds nothing. I'm just going to say this. It adds nothing to the book at all. And it doesn't make me think like, oh boy, these people are really highly into this. It looks like somebody went to them and said, hey, tell us about playing video games in the late 80s and early 90s. And they were like, okay. And they just like recorded themselves talking about it with each other. And then someone typed it up. Yeah. And they just talked about it with each other for like 5 minutes of oh yeah, remember GoldenEye? Sure do. Cool. And like, that's it.
This is going to sound insulting. It sounds like if they asked us to write a foreword for this book.
Yeah, but I think we could have done a better job writing a foreword to this book, because we could have written about this time period in video games and what it meant to us and like how it felt sort of. I didn't live through like sort of the later half of this. We were more in like alive for with like cognizant memories of, so maybe we're not old enough to write a foreword for a book like this, but I think we could have done a better job. I think we would have put more thought and more care into it, and I don't think they did that, and I feel bad for the people who buy the book based on this foreword by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, and they try to play it off as if like we're just two quirky funny guys talking about this stuff, and like it adds nothing. And I love these guys. Like I really enjoy Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg movies, but not the foreword. This ain't it, Chief.
Yeah, it feels like they really just like kind of blazed it up and went for it, you know?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like, which is very on brand for them. But
it is, yeah. But for that reason, I wouldn't have asked them to do that.
Also, how old do I sound when I say blazed it up? I sound like everyone's dad. All right, let's move on to the prologue of the book. And the prologue is pretty fun because it tells a little story about Matchbox cars in Spain.
Yeah, so Tom Kalinske is like, this guy is pretty legendary for what he did with the Genesis, and that's what most of this book is about. But honestly, the man was a freaking legend before he ever even thought about joining Sega. And one of the first things he did was really revamp Matchbox cars in Spain. Not in Spain, everywhere, around the world. And then particularly in Spain, well, do you want to tell the story? It's funny.
Yeah, so essentially his whole thing he did is he like streamlined the manufacturing process for Matchbox cars. So they all were being manufactured in this one place. I think it was in China. I'm not entirely sure on that. But he then found out that Matchbox cars sold poorly in one place. It was Spain. They just sold bad and he didn't know why. And so he goes there and he tells his taxi driver, I'd like to go to the Matchbox car headquarters. And the guy takes him to the address that's not what he knows. And he goes to this other place and it's a factory where they're making Matchbox cars. And he calls his like home office, I guess, and says, we're not manufacturing cars, I thought, in Spain. And the guy's like, no, we're not. He's like, I'm sitting in a manufacturing facility. And then his coworker goes, you need to leave right now, because he was at a pirating facility, I guess. A knockoff counterfeit Matchbox car maker.
The distributor person this is how I understood it. The distributor person that he was working with in Spain to do this had I guess ripped off the ingredients is not the right word, or recipe is not the right word for this sort of
model,
thing. But
I guess.
Yeah. But was doing his own bootleg Matchbox car manufacturing there instead of using the factories he should have. And then I guess just not selling tons and tons of Matchbox cars without giving a cut to Matchbox about it, which I think is hilarious. So they actually were selling incredibly well in Spain. They just weren't getting the money for it or seeing those sales.
How do you think to say, you know what this country needs? Bootleg Matchbox cars. You know, how does your mind go to bootlegging a toy to sell?
I think the person who was supposed to set up this distributor thing, they saw an opportunity to be like, oh, I can get the secret formula, which again is not the right word, but you know what I mean? The secret formula for making, the secret way to make Matchbox cars. And rather than sell the ones that they're giving me from China, I will make them myself with my own factory and then sell them on the side. It seemed like it was an actual Matchbox person doing this extremely illegally and then just pocketing all the cash instead of giving it to Matchbox, who should have gotten it, and then saying, we're not selling anything, when really they were selling.
Who knew?
It was just off the books.
Off the books, bootleg Matchbox cars. You know, You hear a lot about bootleg cars, but not Matchbox cars. That's fun. That's fun for everybody.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. It kind of really brought you into it. Because Tom Kalinske is a legend, and we kind of get that in the beginning. But it's weird because I think in chapter 1, he's on his family vacation, right? He just left Matchbox. It's 1987, I believe is the year. And then he's kind of in a slump, but then you hear about everything he's done later, and it's pretty nuts what he's done. But his wife's not really worried. Karen's not worried. That's his wife's name, if I recall. And then he's just sitting on the beach, and he's found by Hayao Nakayama, who is Sega's president at the time, and is I'm here to recruit you for the Avengers Initiative, essentially. Yeah,
he went on to this place to find him. It wasn't we just happened to run into each other. Nakayama was looking for Klinsky.
It's in Hawaii, right? That's where they went? I think it's
Hawaii, yeah. It was a beachy place.
Yeah, and then we also learned in this chapter that Tom Kalinske hates the beach, and he thinks it's a secret, and his wife's like, it's not a secret. You literally tell us this all the time we're at a beach. It's not. So it's kind of
Everybody knows you hate the beach.
Fun family moment, I guess, is what I would say. But
sort of, except for then he cuts his trip short.
Well, he leaves. His kids stay there, and his wife stays there. True. But he leaves, and he goes to Japan.
Yeah. The guy's like, if you want to be a part of the Avengers Initiative, you need to come now, which is crazy to me. I would be like, cool, can we just wait a week so I can finish and I guess that's why I'm not the CEO of Sega, because I would stay with my family at the beach, even if I didn't like the beach.
Man, there's a lot of things in this book where I'm like, this is why I'm not a CEO. I know obviously why I'm not a CEO. It's because I don't have the organizational skills or charisma to do it.
Sure.
Yeah, just dropping your family vacation and leaving your family to go to Japan to look at some new video game technology in the late 80s. It's not for me, I think.
Yeah. As tempting as it would be, I don't think I'd be able to do that. And I guess, that's why I'm not the CEO.
Yeah, one thing that's also briefly talked about in this chapter, and this chapter, by the way, is called The Opportunity, if you were curious. It also mentions how Tom Kalinske did kind of jump into video games a bit when he worked at Mattel. Do you remember this part? He did like LCD games.
Yeah, they did those like little small handheld games. We did an episode on those once.
Yeah, and he got kind of snubbed too because Mattel makes the Intellivision but doesn't have Klinsky be on board with it, even though he's the one that got them into the game console.
Yeah, he was kind of cheesed off about that, as I recall.
Yeah, he got snubbed, which is messed up. And then it kind of goes into a little bit about things we talked about before, about like the crash in 1983 and all that stuff with arcades, even though the crash in Japan never happened at that point.
That's true.
But I think it's a good chapter. I also think it's heartwarming that, again, I don't know if this is true based on the fictional accounts, but did he actually ask his daughter if he should go join?
Yeah, and his daughter's like, you have to go do this. And like, maybe that's a way of him retroactively being like, no, it's fine. I left my family. My 5-year-old daughter said it was okay, which, okay.
My 5-year-old daughter said it was fine.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know if you should be taking family advice from your 5-year-old daughter, but I guess it's good that you asked somebody. And then his wife also said it was okay. But, this stuff happened 30 years ago. We don't know. We don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe that's what it takes. Like, if you're going to be a CEO, you have to have all of the skills, plus you have to have a family that is supportive. I don't know. Maybe everybody knows that he doesn't like the beach and he's no fun at the beach. And his wife is like, just leave. This is more fun without you anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think... It is a fun, it kind of got me, it's from a narrative standpoint, it did really get me, I'm like, oh, what's going to happen now? It is the Avengers Initiative ending, of the Marvel movies. But if we move on to chapter 2, we learn a little more about Nakayama and how he imports a Cadillac to be his town car in Japan, like a big, like a land boat, essentially, a giant land boat. And it kind of just shows you how much he wants to stand out among other businessmen. And I thought that was pretty interesting because it kind of tells you like what these CEOs are like in their own way. Because I feel like Nakayama is definitely more of a like Playboy style, like look at how cool I am businessman,
Yeah. That's the kind of energy it takes to be like a high level executive, is that kind of stuff. Like, not that you have to do those exact things, but it's like you have to have the desire to want to do those kinds of things, You
gotta be like when Tobey Maguire is taken over by the symbiote in Spider-Man 3. That whole scene where he's walking the streets.
That's right. That's what it takes to be a CEO. You need the symbiote.
Exactly. All these people here have this Venom symbiote in them to make them act this way. But this chapter is cool because we get a look inside Sega's R&D department, which feels very like top secret, which I like.
You can picture this being in like a fictionalized movie form where he's like, he walks into the thing. It's like the Q branch for James Bond. There's just like gadgets everywhere and like all kinds of research and development stuff. And he's like, he gets to see a handheld and he gets to see a virtual reality headset and like a power glove kind of thing probably. And like there's all kinds and it's like, what's in that door? Oh, we can't tell you about what's in that door. Even it's too secret even for you,
Yeah, we also hear more in this point about Michael Katz and how he's like Kalinske is essentially just taking his job.
Yeah,
from him.
he was the current CEO of Sega of America at the time, right? And he and Kalinske have a history. I think they both worked at Mattel. I think Katz is the person who did the Intellivision stuff. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Katz did some stuff with Intellivision, and they actually this is where you kind of learn, at least for me, that Michael Katz really gets screwed over. I feel like he only has a year at Sega before he's replaced with Klinsky. That's it. 1 year.
That's not very much.
And Nakayama just kind of accuses him of just spending all of his money and not doing anything. When I really do think Michael Katz was trying to build something. And this kind of goes back to the book, Ultimate History of Video Games Volume 2, or was it Volume 1, where they talk about this. And they kind of talk about how Klinsky might be getting a lot more credit for things Michael Katz did.
Yeah, I think that happens not uncommonly, because like the things that CEOs do is like looking out years in advance. It's not like turning something around in 6 months, right? It's looking way, way, way out in advance and saying, okay, where do we want to be and how do we set the things in motion to get us to that place? And those things take a lot longer than a year. But during that year, Michael Katz can look out 5 years, say this is where we'd like to be, and start to put those things in motion. And then all Klinsky has to do is come in and just make sure those things still go. I'm not saying that's how it went down. I'm just saying, like, that's the sort of the CEO's job is to set things in motion. So it's kind of like presidents, you know, like the first year of a presidency, like when the president comes out and it's like, we did all these great things. And it's like, well, it was probably the president before you that set all those things up, because there's no way you did that in like the first 6 months of you being in office, right?
Exactly. Also, kind of if you kind of aren't familiar with this, well, the big problem that Sega is having at this period is Nintendo has a real lock on all developers.
Oh, yeah.
All the developers have to sign an exclusivity contract with Nintendo saying they will not make games for any other system. And
this was back in the NES days, yeah.
And the way that Katz tries to get around this is he, like, in the book it says, he hitches Sega's wagon to household names like Joe Montana, Buster Douglas. So making these sports games that are licensed based off of people is how he's trying to get games to sell for Sega.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it didn't seem to work well for them, but I can't say, it sounds like a smart move, right? Like, how do we differentiate ourselves when we can't get the games that Nintendo has because legally, like, those companies can't make any games for us? How do we make awesome games ourselves, or how do we get people to buy our games? And it's that's a good way to do it, is to get like celebrity buy-in, stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. And this is the first part also, too, where in response to Katz doing this, Klinsky just naturally says in this, it's at page 16, I'll just read it. It says, well, Nintendo has Mario, so naturally you guys should have your own mascot character. Someone to crush that little plumber, you know? And Nakayama's like, yes, these are the ideas we need. You know, like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. So it's just two different schools. I don't think because Katz came up with Sega does what Nintendo don't, didn't he? That was him.
I think so. That's a good, yeah, at least I think that happened under his watch.
Yeah.
Let me do a quick Google here.
Which I know irked Sega because those kind of competitive marketing tactics are frowned upon in Japan, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so. Like the like talking down of your rival is not as okay. Yeah, it was during the early 90s is what the Sega Wiki says, which would have been Michael Katz's time, because Kalinske didn't take over till October of 1990.
Yeah, so I think the cool thing here too, at the end of this chapter is kind of short, but at the end of it, we get to see a Game Gear.
Ooh, which wasn't out yet, but was pretty close to being out by then.
That real beefy console. Boy, that was a big handheld.
It was a beefy console, and it was just a master system, in a portable master system, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool, and I believe also we see the Genesis here too. That's the big one. And I remember in the book, Tom Kalinske is astounded by how the controller just feels better than Nintendo, which is a big thing. That's a hard
disagree for me.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I am trying to remember, like, 'cause it's been so long since I've held a Genesis controller, because my mom got rid of mine. Yeah,
oh, man.
There it comes again.
Really,
I'll mention
really
it
don't
every
like
time.
the Genesis controller.
It does feel
it's awful.
It is a weird one, and the Super Nintendo controller feels way better.
Yeah, but the Genesis was out by this point in time, so Michael Katz had launched the Genesis, and it was like it was not doing so great because they didn't have the game that you needed. They didn't have Sonic yet.
Yeah, you gotta have Sonic to sell that Genesis, and it's out in Japan, not North America, right? Was that?
I think it was 80. I think it was 89 in North America.
Oh, okay. Well, so after Chapter 2, Chapter 3 is all about Tom. It's called The Story
August 14th,
of Tom
1989.
Kalinske.
Just looked it up. Sorry.
For the Nintendo line?
No, for the Genesis. August 14th, 1989 in North America.
It
was 88 in Japan. Wow.
That was the year I was born.
Wow.
And I got that system like 7 years later.
Actual birthday.
7 years later. You know, that's how long that system was going, which is pretty nuts when you think about it. But, okay. So, the story of Tom Kalinske. There's a lot of things going on in this chapter because they go to a hostess bar, which I was kind of familiar with this idea Do you know what a hostess bar is?
I know now a little bit more after having read this chapter again.
Yeah, it's kind of like a place where businessmen go and like pretty ladies serve you drink. It's a bar, you know, but the ladies are there to like talk to you and socialize and stuff. That's kind of what I gathered. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah, like a strip club without the stripping.
Without the stripping, just the talk.
Yeah, just the ladies are extra nice to you.
Yeah, they're nice to you and they pretend to be interested in what you're doing.
Sure.
Which is a lot like a strip club, but without the stripping, when you think about it. Yeah, so that's what they're there for. And it's a business spot. It's definitely a business spot. And the one thing that stood out to me is the moment in this chapter when Tom Kalinske sees a businessman like across the room, and he's playing a Game Boy and not paying attention to anything else with the Game Boy.
Well, hey, who among us has not done that?
Yeah, respect to that guy right there. But that's a big part of it. But I kind of like wrote down just some quick nuggets about Tom Kalinske's life. Like this is the TLDR of his childhood growing up. You ready? There's a lot of hits in here.
Okay.
First, he was a singer as a boy in Tucson, Arizona. He joined the boys' chorus, and he toured as a singer.
He was on the Ed Sullivan Show, even.
Yeah, like this is pretty big.
Yeah, so Tom Kalinske, before being CEO of Sega, this is not like we pluck somebody from obscurity. Like this guy, as you're going to learn, he has done a lot before getting to be CEO of Sega of America.
Yeah, he was in, he went to the White House also. He traveled through Australia, Mexico, and Canada, and he did albums for Capitol Records as a singer, as a boy singer. Then he played track at the University of Wisconsin, but he got hurt his junior year. So he stopped running track for them and just finished out college. And then he did he published his own men's magazine called Wisconsin Man with his friend Jonathan Pellegrin, and actually made like money, like made a profitable magazine, which is pretty nuts.
The goal was not like, I want to start a magazine for men because I think that this would be a great magazine. The goal was, it was a marketing thing of like, this is a market that is hard for advertisers to reach. How can we help advertisers reach this market? I know I'll start a magazine that they will want to read, which is like a different angle than coming at it from a different angle than this like, oh man, I want to write a magazine, right? It's like, I want to figure out how to sell things to this demographic. A magazine can help me do that.
Exactly. And so this went so well that he then went to the University of Arizona and studied marketing. And he to pay for school, he like sold ads for the local newspapers and TV studios. Like he sold to them to make money. So he's like full on business mode. He's learning about business while actively doing business to pay for his degree, which is pretty nuts.
Pretty cool.
Yep, pretty cool. Then he gets a job with J. Walter Thompson, which is a New York advertising firm. So think like 80s Mad Men is kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate.
And this is, okay, this is just mind-boggling. He invented the Flintstones chewable vitamin. That was his idea.
The idea to put Flintstones on the chewable vitamin was his idea. He did not invent the vitamin itself.
Well, yeah, I guess, but the idea to make them Flintstones, which is what's like, I ate those as a kid. Did you eat those as a kid?
Yeah, and like the way the book describes it is like they had made these multivitamins for kids that were chewable, but they couldn't get kids to take them because they just seemed like medicine, and kids don't want to take medicine. So he's like, well, what if you just shape them like cartoon characters that kids love? So they did Flintstones. Boom. Everybody loves Flintstones vitamins. I love Flintstones vitamins. I still eat a Flintstones vitamin.
I would eat a Flintstones vitamin right now.
I've eaten 3 since we started this podcast.
Wow. That's the first thing he did. Flintstones vitamins. Mind-boggling.
That's crazy.
That's his first big item. He already did Boy Singer.
Yep.
Track Star. Mad Men. Yep. Okay. Then this is so impressive because he gets this Senate hearing where they're like accusing him of selling drugs to children, which, I mean, if this isn't the most blown up political thing you've ever seen, like vitamins are drugs to children.
The thing that they were upset about was like all of these really, really sweet and sugary like foods, like breakfast cereals and stuff. They're like actually really bad for kids, but they're like, oh, but we fortified them with vitamins, making it seem like, oh no, this like bowl of Trix is actually healthy because it has like an iron supplement in it or whatever. So he's like talking to the Senate and they're like, what the heck? You're selling drugs to kids.
Yeah, but he's just like, they kind of do this question where they say, quote, "Do you really think selling drugs to children is a good idea?" is what the senator asks him. And he responds with, "I think it's a great idea. 50% of America's children are malnourished, and frankly, I don't care how they get their vitamins as long as they get them. We're helping kids stay healthy." And it's just like, boom, he fired back. You know, he was supposed to just kind of take the L there from the senator, and he didn't.
I don't think selling drugs. We're not selling drugs. Like he didn't go on the defensive.
Exactly. And the people who saw him do this were Mattel, the toy company. And they were looking for someone to kind of help out revamp Barbie, and they brought him on board to revamp Barbie. And he does. Like, he does the whole thing. He adds, what does he add here? He adds all sorts of different targeted ages to Barbie. He adds jobs. He adds a twist and turn Barbie, a ballerina Barbie, a Hawaiian Barbie, and even a president Barbie.
Tons of different Barbies, yeah. Because they used to just do like one doll per season, and like you would just buy the Barbie. Like you would buy the Barbie, and that's it. And kids would play with their Barbies, and they had fun. But he was like, no, Barbie is not like just a doll that you play with. Barbie is an idea. Barbie is shows little girls what they can be, what they want to be. And so he's like, so we should just make tons of different kinds of Barbies that will just like let little girls go wild with all the possibilities that they could be. And then they'll have to buy one of every Barbie, of course, right? Because they want to be President Barbie. They want to be Ballerina Barbie. They want to be Hawaiian Barbie, like all of these different things. Yeah.
And also, this is where he meets his wife, his now wife, too, is at the 1979 Toy Fair when Karen, is it Panitz? Panitz?
Yeah, sounds right.
So she was an actress, and she was actually in Saturday Night Fever. You know, all you Saturday Night Fever fans out there, go ahead and watch the movie. Try to find Tom Kalinsche's wife in there. And they hit it off and get married. You know what I like is, in this book so far, their relationship just seems very healthy. Just very nice, you know?
Yeah.
They're both, like, independent. I don't know. It seems good.
Or maybe not. Maybe she doesn't ever want to see him, and that's why she told him to go to Japan instead of be on their vacation.
You're right. The tables have turned. Wow. You've never changed my mind so fast on this podcast.
It's all about how you tell the story.
So after Barbie becomes a success, he then gets asked to make an action figure for men, like for boys.
Yeah, we need boy Barbie. How do we get a boy Barbie?
Yeah, and so they come up with He-Man. So Tom Kalinsche's also responsible for He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Masculine thing. Like if Barbie is like on the other end of the spectrum of like femininity that we could sell to little girls, how can we sell masculinity to little boys is what He-Man is.
I love that He-Man also was always a toy first.
Yeah.
You know, it was designed to sell toys. All the TV show, all that stuff, were just made to sell more toys.
Yep. So many animated TV shows in the 80s and 90s were just to sell the toys. Like even like Power Rangers, that was all about selling toys. Transformers, all about selling toys.
Yeah. It's pretty nuts. And after He-Man, of course, we know, and it's not really talked about in this chapter, it's talked about more in the beginning, but he then goes and to Mattel's competitor and starts working on Matchbox cars. And that's kind of where we get that story in Spain. And that kind of brings us up to the present day. So it's funny because I love a good flashback, and this whole chapter is a flashback.
Yeah, me too. He's like recalling all of these things, the way the story is told. He's recalling all of these things while he's in the hostess bar. And I guess Nakayama's just looking at him like, what are you doing? Like, what is happening here? As he's just like lost in space, I guess, which this is probably one of those things that's like, that probably didn't actually happen. But this is how Blake Harris has chosen to tell us the story.
Yeah, narrative-wise, it just makes more sense.
It works great. Yeah, love it.
So then we flash back to reality. We're back in the hostess bar, and the hostess is asking Tom Kalinske for another drink. And then she is about to pour his drink, and then looks at the Game Gear, and is just like blown away, you know? And then we get the moment like, it's the future. Oh, wow. Goosebumps.
Oh, man.
I
Cut
love
to Black,
this.
directed by Vince Gilligan.
Yeah, this is so cheesy, this moment, but I kind of love it. And I don't mind the cheese, is what I'm saying.
Me neither. Yeah, I think the narrative is played up a little bit in order to make it a little bit more interesting, and I'm here for it. I don't care. He's not telling falsehoods. Like all these stories are true, right? But like the exact way that they happen, is maybe a little bit fudged. And you know what? That's fine. Who doesn't embellish a story a little bit, especially 30 years later?
That's right. It makes me want to watch the show too. Is it a show or a movie?
It's a documentary. It's called Console Wars, and it's about the same subject, but it's not really told in the same way. It's more of a documentary with like interviews and stuff.
See, I feel like this would be a great TV show, and that's like the end of episode 1.
Yeah, I would totally watch this as like a 6-episode TV show. Absolutely.
I'm a big fan. So then chapter 4 is called Rude Awakening, and this is the last chapter we're going to talk about today. But this is Tom Kalinski's first week at the new job. He's at Sega now. He's in the Bay Area in California. He's talking about how his office is kind of dinky compared to the other offices he's had, because he's been like in Manhattan in like a skyscraper, or in Hawthorne, California in this giant 8-story tower for Mattel. And now he's here at this little 1-story warehouse in the Bay Area. And this is where we finally get Michael Katz talking and entering the story here, and it's awkward.
Super awkward, because they're buddies. Like they were, well, not buddies, but like they were friendly before. They kind of roll in the same circles, and they've worked at the same companies a couple of times. And then it's like, oh, Michael Katz shows up and is like, "You're taking my job, dude."
And he also calls him,
he's like, "Sorry, big dog."
A colossally astounding idiot, which is a really great insult, if you're
really
going to insult
great.
somebody. But yeah, this is just like a weird moment, because it starts with them like yelling at each other. Or not yelling. Katz is yelling. Tom Kalinski's like, "I'm sorry. I get it. I understand. This is messed up." But it just kind of goes like, Katz is just kind of telling him, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you just got yourself into.
Yeah. And he's also like, this is also a sinking ship. This Genesis thing's going nowhere. You guys are all dumb. Peace out. Probably put up some middle fingers and left,
I would think so. Yeah, that's probably what's going on. But, and then they have this really awkward like handshake moment where they're like, "I hate you, but I respect you," or whatever CEOs do.
Yeah, sure.
And then we get the first person that works at Sega that Klinsky will be working with, and this is Shinobu Toyota. And Shinobu Toyota, I think this is fascinating because he's from Japan. He's there from Japan. And we learn that his family lives in Dallas, Texas, and he commutes over flight.
Oh my gosh, every weekend he flies home. That's a long flight.
That's a long flight. It's like a 3-hour flight from California. And then he does that every weekend. And on top of that, because he's from Japan, everyone in the office thinks he's like a spy for corporate. Like he's in Sega of America just as like a spy for Sega for Japan. So it's this really awkward relationship he has with everyone there. And Klinsky knows this, but Klinsky also sees him for being like a really smart, bright employee. And you get that kind of in the meeting when they're in this meeting and everyone's yelling at each other and he's actually putting forth like good ideas on how to fix things.
Mm-hmm.
But I also love that he wears Italian suits. He's very fancy. Again, a very fancy CEO. I feel like that's kind of a thing though in the 80s. If you're going to be an executive, you got to wear like really fancy suits.
You got to go all Gordon Gekko on everybody in the 80s.
Totally. So we meet him and then we go into this first meeting where nothing's getting done and everyone's yelling at each other. And essentially, they're kind of just yelling at each other about different projects, and Klinsky's just a fly on the wall, just like sitting back watching this whole thing go back and forth.
This is like the first place he's got to fix things, probably. He's like, look, no wonder we're not doing well. We can't even agree within our own walls.
Yeah, because I think, and it mentions this somewhere, I don't know exactly where at in this chapter, in the quote, but does it kind of paraphrase it? He's like, meetings are supposed to be like, we're here to fix things.
Yeah.
We're here to actually like work together, help each other, fix each other's problems. And the meeting at Sega of America, the first time he goes in, they're all just blaming each other. Like all yelling at each other, blaming each other for how terrible things are going. And Tom Kalinske does pipe up at the one point to be like, hey, well, why don't we just do this? Why don't we just pay them more money to like develop for us? And then everyone looks at him like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing.
This is the like throw him out the window meme.
Yeah. Like, it's so upset. Because I think the argument is, he's like, why don't we just pay the Nintendo developers more money? And they're like, no, they signed a contract to only do stuff with Nintendo. They won't break that contract. And it's just really awkward. And then we have two other people that Kalinski's worked with before. Paul Roux, I think it's Roux, Rioux, and Al Nilsson. And Roux is a Vietnam vet. I pictured him looking like a G.I. Joe. I don't know if that's entirely right. But that's what I pictured.
A cigar hanging out of his mouth.
Yeah, he looks like Nick Fury, but in a suit with like the gray hair and a cigar that's always unlit.
An eye patch.
Eye patch. That's what I think. And then we have Al Nilsson. And both of those people Tom Kalinske worked with at previously. And so he's like, okay, those two and then Shinobu Toyota are going to be my three that I work with.
These are my dudes.
Yeah, and the chapter ends kind of on a happy note because I think, it's Roux comes up to him and is like, hey, I've kind of like familiarized myself with like Nintendo, and here's like a big book on everything you need to know about the industry and Nintendo. And that's like the first nice gesture I think he gets here. And yeah, and it kind of, it segues right into the next chapter, which is all about the history of Nintendo, which I've already started reading. This is probably the most comprehensive history of the early days, like the trading card days of Nintendo, I think we've read on this podcast or talked about on this podcast. And I'm really excited to get into that next week. But
me too. Yeah,
this book is just so wonderful in how it's laid out. I'm really enjoying it.
Me too. I'm glad that he picked Tom Kalinske as like the point of view character as the person who revamped the Genesis in the 90s, and then sort of has a fall too as well, right? Like because the Genesis always does great, but the Saturn and everything afterwards kind of doesn't do so well. So it's like a sort of flash in the pan, like a moment in time where everything is great, and it's Tom Kalinske. Later on, it ends up not being so great, but we do get good perspectives on Howard Lincoln and all the people over at Nintendo and Nintendo of America, like what they're doing at the same time too. So it's not just Tom Kalinske, but he is definitely what I would consider to be the protagonist of this story. Yeah, and I think my plan for next week is to get up to page 100. So we're going to read chapters 5, chapters 6, and then 7. Oh, actually, we're going to read it even farther. We're going to read up to chapter 11, I think. Oh, wow. Next week. Yeah. So we're going to do chapters 5 through 10, and we're going to end on 11. Okay. That's where we're going to be at next week. But I'm loving this book. I'm stoked about it. I read it every night. It's just like a fun little story to read. Yeah, I love it too. Yeah, I'm stoked we're doing this. So with that, you want to read some emails? Sure. All right, let's get into some emails. I'll read Sam's email. All right. The subject is backward compatible or forward compatible ? Hi guys, Sam from Alabama here. I just listened to your episode about backward compatibility, and I wanted to share an interesting tidbit about Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. The original Game Boy had those iconic gray cartridge, but have you ever seen a black cartridge? Yes, I have. It looks like original Game Boy style cart, but it's black. I always thought it was just another color of plastic similar to the original Pokemon games, but those black cartridges were actually for the Game Boy Color. The difference is that the black cart was designed with specific color data while still being compatible with the old Game Boy. Mega Man Extreme, for example, is sold as a Game Boy Color game, but it has the older style black cartridge, meaning it's forward compatible or perhaps just compatible. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this neat piece of trivia. Great podcast as always. Keep that history coming. Spider butts, Sam from Alabama. Thanks, Sam. Those are, I guess we should have talked about those because those are specifically, I think forward compatible is maybe the right word. I wonder if they came out before the Game Boy Color did, but they were basically just original Game Boy games that had some like additional color data and sometimes like a few additional features if the game detected it was being played in a Game Boy Color, as opposed to like Game Boy Color exclusive games, which also existed that just would not run on an older Game Boy. Yeah, I actually had a couple of these black carts. Some games got re-released. Zelda got a DX re-release. I feel like there was a Tetris one that got a re-release. Several games got like new releases with color data. And I think Zelda DX had a specific dungeon just for Game Boy Colors that like you needed color to be able to make it through the dungeon. It wouldn't even let you in the dungeon if you try to play it on an older Game Boy, but like you actually did need color to be able to solve the puzzles too, which is kind of neat. That's really cool. Yeah, great piece of trivia, Sam. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
All right, I'm going to read this next one. This is from Joe from San Diego. Joe says, Ricky made his choice. That's the subject line. Mike, Ricky made his choice. He's not coming back. He gave up on Pokemon Snap, so I don't think he deserves that save anymore. Ooh.
Ooh, dang.
This isn't like the time my brother deleted my Pokemon Red save while I was actively playing it, in parentheses, a cardinal sin.
Yes, definitely.
I kid, of course. It's fun to imagine some of my old saves living on from a long gone N64 that I traded in for a GameCube. On an unrelated note, you guys mentioned going through a game together. I've already forgot which one. Have you considered recording any retro games you do playthroughs of together and uploading it to YouTube? It would be cool to see you guys do like, quote, Codex Deep Dive type of thing, where you play through old games using something like Steam Share Play or Parsec. With Parsec, you can swap between who has control as well if you do single-player games. I played Mario Party 3 with a friend in LA and another in Virginia using Parsec, which was super fun. It was also funny playing a Nintendo game on a Windows PC with a PlayStation controller. Congrats on 200 episodes, Spider-Butts Joe from San Diego. That's a great idea. We've talked about this in the past, I think, you and I.
Yeah, it's just work to like record a thing and like edit it and get it into a state that's consumable on YouTube, but I'm not opposed to the idea. I think it would be fun.
Yeah, I feel like if we ever did a Patreon, which we've kind of flirted with and talked about before, having an extra thing like this to be a patron exclusive thing would be what we would do.
Yeah, that might be the way to do it.
So yeah, maybe in the future
also,
sometime.
he included a meme here. Of,
this meme is so good.
It's the Andy from Toy Story dropping Woody into the garbage can saying, I don't want to play with you anymore. But it's Ricky and Woody is Pokemon Snap.
That is a really good meme. I'll put that in the Discord. Thank you, Joe. That's great. So our last email is from Mackenzie, and it says, do not read this before recording. I haven't read it, and Tyler hasn't read it. Do you want to be the one that opens this?
Sure. I can see just the briefest beginning of the thing where it says, hello again. You both have 5 seconds to answer this question starting, and then it cuts off. So I'm about to click it, okay?
All right, ready.
Here we go. You both have 5 seconds to answer this question starting as soon as you read it. What is your favorite game of all time? 5 seconds, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
I'm going to go with, Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening?
Okay,
nope, that's
sure.
not true. Super Mario World. Sorry.
All right.
Sorry. Yeah, Link's Awakening's fun, but I love Super Mario World more.
All right. Well, Mackenzie then goes on to say, I am evil. Spider-Butts, Mackenzie. P.S. What kind of cat is podcast producer Toby? I must know. I'll take a picture and I'll put it in the Discord. He's a black and white cat. He kind of looks like, if you've ever played Persona 5, he kind of looks like Morgana from Persona 5.
He does look like Morgana, if Morgana would just randomly turn off your PC for no reason.
Yeah, yep. And she would. Morgana would do that. Or he would. I don't know. Is Morgana gendered in Persona? I don't think so.
I don't know, but I'm excited to play those games now because they're coming to Xbox.
Game Pass. Hey!
Woo-hoo. We're recording this the day of the Xbox show thing, so that's exciting. And it's 3, 4, and 5. That's 400 hours of content.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's Persona 3 Portable, which is the PSP version, which has a bunch of extra content, and you can play as a female protagonist, which changes some of the storylines a little bit. I'm very excited to play through that again. Persona 4 has already been on Steam. I bought it forever ago, and I'm probably 10 hours into it, so I should probably keep playing on that save file. And then Persona 5 Royal on with achievements, and it's on Xbox, and it's on PC, and oh man, I can't wait. And that comes out. Persona 5 comes out in October, I think.
Persona
and the other one's
5
next
is
year.
the one that you were playing when I would watch you play it at your house, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the Strikers thing, and that's different.
That's different. Yeah, that's already on Xbox. Would be nice if they put it on Game Pass, but I think it's already on Xbox.
It would be. Also, Mackenzie, you didn't ask, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Delilah, the podcast producer, is part Russian blue and part calico. I learned this from my fiance. She told me.
All right.
And I know that's because she's a gray cat, but she's got these little orange specks on her body, which is adorable.
She is adorable. Delilah is the best.
She's currently sleeping in her office right now, supervising. She's supervising the podcast currently. All right. Well, with that, if you want to send us an email, you can do that at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can join our Discord. You can do that by either following me on Twitter at Mecoletta, MECOLETTA, and pick up the pinned tweet. If you click on that, top my profile, it's an invite that never expires. So that's how you can join. You can also join through email as well, and I'll send you that. Also, we didn't prepare 20 questions this episode, but I'm going to throw it out there. If you have a 20 questions for like one of us, you can send it to the other person in our email. Just like write all caps, 20 questions for someone's eyes only. Like Tyler's eyes only if it's for me, or Mike's eyes only if it's for Tyler. So if you want to try to challenge one of us with a game,
let's do it.
You can do that way. I think that's a fun, like, listener submitted thing we could do is 20 questions.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah, we didn't really know how long this episode was going to go today with this new, like, format of just kind of chatting about the book, but I thought it was great.
Me too.
So next week, we'll kick it off again with Console Wars chapters 5 through 10. And we'll see you then. You want to say bye to everybody, Tyler?
Yeah, goodbye, everybody.